Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sustainability Network. Today, we are meeting the founder of Green the Map, Vimlendu. Green the Map was probably one of our first brands that Goli Soda started to work way back in 2013. Green the Map focuses mostly on upcycled and funky products at a time when many people didn't even understand what the word upcycling meant. At that point in 2013, even Goli Soda was trying to focus mostly on upcycled products, and Green the Map was the first name that came up, and we had to work with them. At that point, they were actually called Green the Gap, and now they've renamed to Green the Map. Green the Map is part of a bigger social enterprise called Swachha. They are primarily a youth organization that works in the space of environment, education, and financial empowerment. And they are over 20 years old, so they've got a wide experience in this space of sustainable living. Another interesting reason or why I'm excited to meet Vimlendu is because he has a background in filmmaking, and being a filmmaker myself, I'm very curious to know how two of our passions have come together for both of us. So I'm quite excited to know more about Green the Map and Swachha and the kind of work they do. They're primarily based out of Delhi, and Green the Map as well now has a website that caters to other brands as well. They're a shop similar to Goli Soda as well. And if you look at their products, it's extremely funky, path-breaking, I would say. They have purses made out of Tetra Pak. They have rubber tire bags. It's very chic, very contemporary, and that's what made me love Green the Map. And I said I need to have this brand in Goli Soda, because the minute when somebody says sustainability, eco-friendly, they think it's you'll have to carry like a very boring old style jolna, or wear like a faded kurta and say I'm eco-friendly, I'm sustainable. But I think Green the Map completely changed that concept and said, you know what, you can be cool and still be sustainable. And that's what I loved about Green the Map, and that's why we work with them. And of course, because of their other policies and ethics and values, which we'll get to know more as we speak to Vimlendu. Once again, I would like to tell our viewers that please feel free to ask us any questions over chat with respect to sustainability, or in this episode particularly about upcycling. I'm sure Vimlendu and I will be happy to answer these questions. And if any of you missed our previous episodes, of course, we are up on IGTV, but our episodes are up on our Goli Soda YouTube page as well. We'll soon be up on podcast channels as well. So the Sustainability Network, for those of you who are new, we have been meeting many interesting brands and their founders to know more about their values, their ethics, their thought on sustainability. And these are brands that Goli Soda has been working for the last many years, and we are hoping to meet more and more of our brands. We work with over 50 brands, and there's a long way to go, and I hope you have been enjoying whatever you've been seeing so far. The next few days you will be meeting the founder of Skola, the founder of Mitti Se. Skola is a brand that works with early child learning. Mitti Se works in personal care, and as the name suggests, it's very earthy, it's very Indian. They have some really lovely personal care products. And then we will also be meeting another very interesting upcycling brand called I Was a Sari. And as the name suggests, most of those products were a sari before. And yet another interesting brand similar to Green the Map. So we are just waiting for Vimlendu to come online, and then we will start our chat very soon. We are waiting.
Yes. Hi, Vimlendu.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Good to finally meet after so many years of working together.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Are you
How
able to
have you
hear me
been?
well?
I do. Do you hear? Can you hear me?
Yes, I do. It's all fine.
Oh. So how you been?
Good. Surviving lockdown and post lockdown and new
Oh,
lockdown,
but
and
for us in Chennai, it's still a lockdown.
it's
Till July.
in every way it is a lockdown for us as well. As of course, uh, everything has the pandemic has actually changed its meaning because we've actually seen so much spike everywhere. But life is very normal on the streets, but in homes there's anxiety, countryside there's distress. So yeah, it's not the best time for any of us, but yes,
We can only hope for the best.
absolutely.
I hope, I will anyway come to that because at the end of every session, I ask every speaker about what the lockdown has
You have to be a little louder because I'm not able to hear you well.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes, it's better now. Yes.
Okay, there's a little feedback that's coming.
Is it because of my from my end?
No, I can hear my voice. So you want to speak those?
No,
Anyway,
I'm on a
that's fine. I can
headphone.
do it.
I'm on a headphone.
Okay. Yeah, so I will be coming to the whole concept of the lockdown policies that will be the last thing. So let's start straight. Tell us, before we talk about the map, I think we have to talk about switch. So could you start off, tell our viewers, and you guys have been around for 20 years.
That's right. Yes. So
That's amazing.
yeah, I was born
Congratulations.
with Switcha, or Switcha was born with me in that sense. So Switcha started around 20 years ago. I came to Delhi to study at Delhi University at St. Stephen's College, and I was involved in several campaigns. This is year 97 to 2000, and I was involved with several campaigns that were actually happening in and around Delhi on environment. So there was a very strong anti-dam movement, regarding the Narmada Bachao Andolan. Similarly, there was an anti-nuclear campaign happening. There were lots of different things happening in the country at that time. It was only 10 years of globalization, privatization, and therefore things were starting to show up. And I used to volunteer for some of these campaigns and movements. That's when my desire to take 1 year off from studies after college and do something about this river that we have in Delhi called Yamuna. Of course, I was involved when I was involved with Narmada is when I realized that, well, there is a river in Delhi as well, which is completely polluted, and wonder why nobody talks about it. So I thought I'll take 1 year off from studies and begin a campaign called V for Yamuna. It was like a no office, no logo, no banner, no program organization. It was just a 1 year off gap year for me in that sense. But interestingly, whatever happened in that 1 year gave me a lot of strength to do more than just 1 year of engagement in civil society space, in the environment space. And that 1 year is not over as yet, as in it's been 20 years now. A couple of days ago, we finished 20 years. It was our birthday. Thank you. And initially, of course, when Switcha started, initially our focus was one thing called Yamuna, the river, and one approach called shouting, screaming on the streets and fighting and confrontation. And within a few years, so I went to Bombay to do my master's after 1 year was over, because I thought, 1 year is what I could afford to really give to this particular campaign. When I came back from Bombay, I used to work for an organization and then for a bank development bank for some time, and then after 1 year realized that this is not what I want to do. I want to go back and do what I was good at, which was Swechha. And since then, which is in 2004 to now, which is Swechha 2.0, I would say, which started of a different kind, was working on issues of environment, education, and enterprise. So since then, Swechha works, and that's why Green the Map is actually part of Swechha, or say, I would say daughter of Swechha rather than sister of Swechha, in that sense. But our work, primarily we work with schools, we work with young people. In last 12 months, we would have worked with around 100,000 young people in 120 schools, where we run curriculums on environment, on sustainability, on sustainable lifestyle, on looking at, fundamentally looking at things that are local. It's not just about worrying about what's actually happening at the North Pole, but what's happening in my backyard. And that's where redefining sustainability for young consumers also, that how is our consumption linked to what is getting produced all around the world.
Yeah.
Why do we actually have...
Probably affecting the Yamuna. What we do
Absolutely.
here might be affected by the Yamuna. So
That's
I
right.
think that's
And also
something
looking at
to
our
wait.
production patterns around the world, that why do we actually have a certain kind of food joints coming everywhere? Or why do we have a particular kind of clothes? And all of it is linked to, of course, they say, well, there's a demand, and demand side says, oh, well, there's a supply. So a lot of our work has been with young people on that. We plant forests. So far, we've planted around 50,000 trees in different parts of Delhi with 95% survival. We work with young girls in different slums of Delhi, working on issues of life skills and also livelihood, linking employability with empowerment. And that's where in 2008, we started Green the Map, which primarily started with me making a film. I used to take young people on this landfill walk, as a part of our curriculum. And in one of the landfill walks inspired me to really, why don't I make a film? So I made a film called Wasted, which was journey of my own garbage from my own house to a landfill. So if I chuck something in the dustbin, where does it actually go? So I actually followed that packet of chips to the final place where it went. And then after a few years, I actually made another film called Disposable, which was journey of my waste, symbolically in that sense. Of course, that chips packet was gone by then. But journey of a chips packet from the landfill to, say, a slum, a recycling center, an informal recycling, upcycling regime that exists in India, that is not recognized by the government or by the people. These are the people who are the hidden heroes, hidden environmentalists, like people like you and I. We keep speaking about environment, keep attending conferences, write great articles, do Instagram posts about environment, flaunt our Fab India and Good Earth and all kinds of things. But those people are the real ones. Every day they upcycle, recycle tons of garbage. And that's where the idea of Green the Map started, as in between the two films, that can, rather than sending something to a landfill, and rather than leaving something at a landfill, and rather than actually letting all that waste getting recycled, so all the waste that goes to the rack pickers, that is fed back to the industry. But that recycling is the worst thing. Recycling means burning it down, breaking it down. Like you actually burn, boil, melt plastic to make buckets.
More water is involved.
Absolutely, many of those, energy and everything else. So that's where we said, why, anyway, in 3R, first is reduce, second is reuse, and third is recycle. And there's a reason why recycling is last, because recycling is last, because recycling is worst, is the most dangerous environmental practice compared to the other two. And that's where Green the Map was actually born. And we make, as you said in your introduction, we make things out of waste, anything we don't scout for something. We whatever that we find is what we end up making. And for us, as in when we started Green the Map and in Switch as well, quality has been at the core. Just because we make things out of waste, just because it has a social meaning, just because our products are made, we are a fair trade company and therefore made by marginalized groups who have migrated from smaller towns and villages, that doesn't mean the product needs to look poor and shabby. And that's why we kept design and innovation central to our discourse on sustainability. So, two parts of this conversation, I'll give it back to you. So, Swechha, which is the program part of it, which actually looks at inspiring people and motivating people and telling them why to be responsible and why there's no planet B and therefore we need to care about it. And Green the Map is the product aspect of things, where it's saying that when I said why not, when you say no to certain things, say yes to certain things too. And that's where Green the Map comes.
No, that's very well said when you talk about design and quality, because even when we started going through that was also a similar aim as well, that just because we are going to be sustainable, we have to compete with every other product in the market and say we are still very good. And I can assure that the durability of the product is amazing, because I had this one thing that cap I would say the cap wallet that lasted me.
Yes, some of the products we actually say that it will last you lifelong. Some things are for forever.
Yes.
You get bored of it.
Because it's almost the same. When it goes to the landfill, it's going to be there forever. But so the material that you're using are actually quite durable, and you're making it with interesting design and adding to that durability and the product. There was also talk that we have to relate with the different generation, especially if it's our business, but then this whole concept of upcycling has brought the whole concept of sustainability food for the younger generation. When a college people about carrying bags, so while talking about that, tell us about the whole design aspect. Who's the team within the design? They do they first see when that comes to them and say, "Can we now design something?" Or it's the other way around, simultaneously.
So we actually don't have a dedicated design team.
Wow.
So I actually wear that hat as well. So I do everything from doing mopping the floor to jharu pocha to shouting on television shows to actually designing and everything else that I do. So some bit of it is so it's basically, I would say that most of our products in terms of design are motivated by things that we actually see around us or things that we see on the web. But our biggest designers, if I have to say, rather than me taking the credit, is our tailors. So say, for example, if I conceptualize a bag, of course I look at a medium and say, well, out of a chips packet, what can be made? So then we look at that material, look at the durability, look at what all can it actually serve, and then I do a basic sketch. See, I don't know, I can't even draw one straight line straight. So I can't draw a line straight. So therefore there's no way of sketching. But I do a conceptual drawing of a product, and then it's my tailors who actually then make a first prototype, and then we improvise on that. So we work on, rather than actually making the product on the computer, we actually make the product on the table, then use it, and then figure things. And of course, as I said, some of our products are actually inspired by some amazing work that's actually happening in other parts of the world. So that doesn't mean that we copy designs or something, but largely looking at what is funky, what is cool. But we don't do we're not a Rohit Bal. We don't do a summer collection and a spring collection and a 2020 and a 2019. Some of our products are products that we designed 10 years ago, and we still are living with those, because that's what for us
it's still very fashionable and funky, I would say, and that's
if you
another
say
interesting
so.
aspect of being sustainable.
Absolutely, as in this entire culture of if you look at, that's what my first point to you was, that this entire concept of fashion becoming redundant is the mother of all the waste that is created. Like today it was small mobile, and tomorrow it's the bigger mobile, and yesterday it was baggy shirts, and today it is tight fit, and third day it's tropical is in like. Life is not a mood board. Our resources come from our minds, from our trees, from our forests, from our plants, from our people. And it cannot be like a 3 monthly, quarterly affair that, oh, well, what is trending today is this fashion, and therefore we have a spring, summer collection, and later there'll be an autumn, and therefore I'll buy autumn. You can't buy in spring, and then in summer, and then in autumn, and then in winter, and then we are against the idea of. We're asking people to slow down. We're talking about slow fashion. So we talk about sustainable fashion, we talk about slow fashion, we talk about responsible fashion. Because the idea is also not that we make eco-friendly products, which is a bag could be made out of paper or jute or organic fabric. But if it is actually made by children, or if it's made in a sweatshop where people are not paid well, a consumer might see a fancy green, eco-friendly bag, but if brown is not part of green, then green is a waste.
Wow. That's very well said. I think I didn't have thought of it that way at all. But I keep saying it's sustainability. That's why we call it sustainability. It's not about being sustainable. I think the world needs to talk in the space of sustainability and social, there is every stage of that product until it reaches you and it leaves you. It's a package. People need to be more and more aware of where the product is coming from, how it's I love the way I love this now. Talking about that, can you tell us about it? We know that the products are made of waste. There should be a process to that. Posting, cleaning, the people behind it.
Well, I'll tell you, and let's go back to this concept called upcycling, and I'll answer your question, but let's go back. Like this, we've been using this term called upcycling and recycling and sustainability and reuse. Our grandmothers used to do the same thing. They never watched a documentary and did that. They never took that to a factory to clean that medium. A sari that you were talking about, I was a sari. My mom and my grandmom and my nani and my par-nani and my great-grand-nani, she's been running that company called I Was a Sari for 100 years, right? Of course, she was not on Instagram, she wasn't on Facebook, she wasn't on Green the Map, she wasn't on Goli Soda. So there's no rocket science to these things. These things have been part of our culture for the longest time. Of course, it was all part of need, because they realized it as a need of the family, of their society, and that's why it was part of culture. For us, environmentalism or sustainability is still young people don't think it's need, it's fashion. So they'll wear organic because it's fashionable, not because there's a planet connection. As in they understand the planet connection too, and therefore I'm not blaming them for that, but largely sometimes it's faddish as well. So when you ask me that, what do we actually do with our products? How do we make it? Well, we just clean it. We don't use any chemicals. For tire, of course, we are not making, plates out of tire so that you have to put your, your sambar in it or your food in it. It's a bag, it's a wallet, it's a thing. So we do basic cleaning of everything that we buy, and we actually buy our waste. Because it's not just about one little chips packet that I'll eat at night and I'll make it into a bag in the morning. We're talking about a proper production and a system. So we buy it from the waste market, which is fairly organized in our country, but is hidden, as I said. They don't have a stock market, they don't have a wholesale market, but they have a market. And we do basic cleaning, keep in mind health and environment and health and safety of both the producer and the end consumer of our product. Therefore, all our products are chemical free. We don't even use chemicals or any special mediums to clean it. It's basic washing. Sometimes we use a washing machine to clean a tire, or say, for example, Tetra Pak cartons that perhaps had juice in it earlier. But yeah, that's how it's been. It's fairly simple process. We are very old school grandmother way of doing things. Some fundamentals are still grandmother-like.
What I'm more curious is like, not many people know, as you said, many people don't know finally where this high-flow chips are. They say the landfill, and still they don't know what happens after this. The people behind working, there are people working there, and so source of living for the landfill. There is a exhalation that's happening all because we haven't segregated. So I'm curious about you buy certain ways and then segregate it here or don't segregate it, and then you decide if you're selling these products, these looks interesting and I thought
Okay, so we actually don't get a dustbin. We get already segregated product. So for example, if I'm making a tire bag, I actually source 100 kilos of tire. If I'm making a Tetra Pak wallet, then I'm actually sourcing only Tetra Pak wallet. So that's what I was telling you, that there is already an organized, so we don't go and pick 20 kgs of garbage from the landfill and then we sit and segregate, take plastic out of it and tire out of it and remains of mutton, chicken from it. We don't do that. It's in India, that's what I was telling you, that people don't know, but there is, and that's what my film Disposable is about, that every time you brush your hair and you chuck your hair in the dustbin, and you might think it just goes because early in the morning someone comes to pick your dustbin and takes it away, even your hair gets recycled and upcycled. There is a whole market, there's a whole industry around everything that we do. Every time you actually drink that mineral water and chuck the cap, there's a whole factory which is only processing, segregating that. Every time, I throw this pen, for example, this metal tip that is there, even that gets recycled, upcycled. Someone is actually picking each of this tip and putting it back into production cycles. So there is already an unorganized, unrecognized, ill-paid, violated sector called recyclers, or who we call rack pickers, who do a great service. And as I was telling you, everything, not a single thing goes waste in that sense. Of course, as in just because it all goes to the landfill, they legally are not allowed to segregate. So the government doesn't segregate garbage at source. Government doesn't segregate garbage at the landfill. It's the poor people who actually end up doing it, and not because they're doing it because of environmental reasons. They're doing it for livelihood reasons, because they are the poorest of the poor people, and that's why they have to spend 10 days in 10 hours or 12 hours every day amidst that methane and toxic gas coming out of the landfill and segregating all of that, or scouting for garbage that they can actually sell.
So tell us. For example, so we have to buy most of your products on the factory, rubber tire. If they were not upcycled, what would that happen? What does a rubber tire get recycled into something? Just goes to the landfill, just packaged.
So different of these products that we use, some of them would have landed up in the landfill, would have ended up being in the landfill. Some would have.
So there's no recycled concept.
No, some don't. As on paper there is, but a lot. Like for example, tire. Where is old tire used in India, or tire and rubber? Old tire is used in brick making industries, where they burn it. So tires are burnt in actually a lot of these brick kilns. Because they can burn it, and people who work around it, poorest of the poor people, work in these brick factories or brick kilns or whatever that's called. Similarly, if you look at plastic is again, as in a lot of this plastic, because of cheap plastic, and can't be really recycled, that would stay at the landfill. Good quality plastic comes back to the recyclers, then they shred it and make and recycle it. So therefore, for every product there's a different medium, but there is always an environmental cost. So there's an environmental cost involved if the product is left at the landfill. There's an environmental cost that is involved if the product is actually recycled, shredded, burnt, incinerated into either energy or gas or to pellets to make bucket or another plastic product in that sense. And that's the chain that we disrupt. And
Yes.
we are a very small organization, by the way. So we, Delhi has a production of what, over 10,000 to 11,000 metric tons of garbage every day. We upcycle a few kilos every day. So we have been, imagine 10,000 metric tons of garbage, 70% of it is non-biodegradable. Compare that with a few kilograms or maybe a few in 2-digit kilograms of garbage that we upcycle. So it's not enough. We are not a solution. We are not a solution to the waste problem that India is facing. And what is the waste problem? Waste problem primarily means that we are actually contaminating our soil, we are contaminating our water and groundwater table, and of course air, and we are acidifying our soil and everything else. And then of course people in public health. So at the end of the day, when cities like Delhi and Mumbai and Chennai have bad air, where does that bad air come from? It doesn't come from Pakistan. It comes from your local backyard, from your landfills, from your vehicles, from your fancy cars, from your waste burning.
That's what I believe recycle is actually not the right word to use, because most of the time it's actually a downcycling that happens.
Absolutely.
Because once that happens, that is probably the final solution, because there's more recycling once again. Most of the time the quality is poor. You used up a lot of energy. So in fact, that whole concept of reduce, recycle is of no relevance to this day and age. I think maybe 50 years ago, 45 years ago, when plastics were just coming in, but just legalizing more commercial, and maybe it makes sense. But right now, those 3 hours don't make sense.
Yeah.
So, coming to the whole concept of education in terms of mostly environment. How is it? Is it difficult, or is it easy to get it through? When you work mostly with people, adolescents and children, is it easier? But at the same time, easier working with children from a certain class of the society than another class, because the way they see waste, environment is different, because they have other issues that they face. Maybe other issues.
Yeah. So first of all, with respect to class, we don't work on issues of environment so much with the poor people, with a marginalized section, because they are not the one who are polluting. So why should I give them education and knowledge on environmentalism? They don't need it. Their life or their footprint is much lower. So it's not about whether they have the financial capacity and therefore other worries. Of course they have other worries, but this, their per capita water availability is less than 10 liters per person. They don't waste water, and you and I flush 100 liters of water every day. So environmentalism, when I'm talking about, my dustbin is big. Their dustbin, maybe the entire family would have little bit of waste that would be generated. In some of our middle class dustbins, you'll actually find some phones and all kinds of things, and a pizza box and headphones and all kinds of things. So therefore, from an education point of view, we in a education or sustainable education or sustainable lifestyle in education is not required necessarily in the poorest of the poor, because by design they live very sustainably. Although I only add one point that yes, we need to work on their aspiration, because they are also aspiring. Once they have money, they would also want to become the way middle class becomes, in terms of consumption, in terms of opulence, in terms of indulgence, in terms of footprint. That's one. The other is, about the other class, as you know, when we talk about, so a lot of our work is with rich people, with middle class, because that's where the problem is. So when we look at our landfill, the 10,000 metric tons of garbage that Delhi produces, I'm very, very sure that 10% of Delhi, which will be the top rich people, produce 90% of that garbage. So it's the rich, and therefore fixing the landfill problem cannot be. But who cleans it is the poor. The poor clean it, but is created by the rich. So we work a lot with privileged schools, primarily because they're the ones who need to mend their act, fix their act, change their behavior, and that's one. Two, from an agency point of view, and that's where your point comes, that tomorrow if I have to really organize a protest on clean air or do solar, a poor person might not have the agency. He or she doesn't even have money to eat. And how can he or she look at buying a solar panel and leaving their job and going for a cycle rallies to support cycling? And so all that can't be, is very difficult, and therefore we, from a responsibility point of view, it's important to work with the privileged, because they are the ones who are responsible for the mess. And we also need to work with the privileged because they have more agency. As someone said earlier, that the hungry can't go on a hunger strike.
Yeah.
So poor people can't really afford to do it. It's the privileged who need to really talk about it. It's difficult, but my journey, and I work as a teacher as well for the last 20 years. In fact, first 5 years, my day is to start teaching at 7:30 in the morning, as to go and teach at some school or the other in Delhi. I must have taught thousands of hours in different schools of Delhi. And right now, I do less of teaching and I do more of what to teach and how to teach work globally. So I also serve on UN Environment's Global Board on Sustainable Lifestyle and Education. It's a 20-member international board. So I do some bit of work with UNESCO. I do some work with UN organizations, largely on what to teach and how to teach and who to teach in that sense. And in all of this, can environment be taught? When environmentalism, is it a theory or is it a practice? And if it's a practice, like as much as, with lockdown, I'm sorry we talked about lockdown again, as in, how can you teach how to plant,
but we are almost
plant a tree?
to the end of the show, so you can
Yeah, so
talk
how can you
to us
teach
about
someone
the
how to
lockdown.
plant a tree on Facebook? Or save the tiger by joining a group called Save the Tiger? At the end of the day, a tree can only be planted in your backyard or in the forest, not by starting a Facebook group or an Instagram post on how to plant a tree. So some fundamentals, when we talk about cleaning the air and cleaning our water, that needs work on the ground and not my status message on Twitter.
Thanks. So back to the concept of lockdown. As I said, in how can it be very, very interesting, very fascinating. So I'm asking you the question that I'm asking all my guests. So all of us have been going through many things during this lockdown period,
Personally and professionally. So, what is it to you? What has this period taught you, or what have you been?
You hear me? Okay, so if it was not a lockdown, if it wasn't lockdown, then this time of the year I grow trees because it's the monsoon time. But I've chosen to grow my beard, so that's one thing that I've done this lockdown. I've been spending a lot of time with my dogs. Was that your question? How have I been spending my my lockdown?
Yes, spending. I'm sure you've been having a lot of thoughts due to this period. Uh, some people, it's been kind of transformational this whole period. So,
You know,
you
it's
can
full
say
of
whatever you
anxiety.
want.
I haven't really attained any nirvana. I haven't had a Buddha moment in lockdown as yet. Some people might have had. I haven't. I'm feeling extremely stressed, anxious about people, thousands and millions of people who have lost their jobs, who have migrated and died, thousands and millions of people who are unwell and who will get unwell in the next coming weeks, unfortunately.
Yes. Yes.
I'm worried about the planet because when the lockdown opens up, our industry and our governments, we would want to compensate quickly and open up
Yes.
to make up for the money lost. And that's why today, they are actually diluting the environmental impact assessment laws in our country. And today was the last day, but the High Court today extended it. So I'm spending, and also a lot of people who have lost their jobs. Our sector, for example,
Yes.
many brands are shutting down. Sustainability is not a priority for many people. So these are difficult times, and I am not. I haven't gained any halo as I said, a nirvana as yet.
No,
I'm only
I was
anxious.
just curious because each one, I mean, these anxieties are part of many people's lives right now. It's like,
Absolutely.
um,
So I'm,
I
I'm,
tell
I'm
people,
distracting myself by doing, cycling, finding
dog,
seats early in the morning, playing with my dogs, writing articles, imagining that what perhaps what the new world would look like,
Yes.
and should the new world look like the old world, or we should actually imagine a newer world, a new normal, which is completely different from the old one, because the old one collapsed because it was shitty. And that's the reason why our hospitals and our structures and everything else. Like, imagine such a beautiful time in that sense that you can actually hear the birds and see the rivers and see the sky and all of that.
No, I guess one of the reasons why we are doing this talk is also because many people who were in the borderline, should I make a lifestyle switch or not? We felt that this is a good time for people to rethink the way we have been living so far. We are forced to slow down our lives in a good or a bad way, but it's also a good time for us to make that shift to a more sustainable life. So that's the reason why I'm having these conversations, hoping that somewhere somebody is probably inspired and saying, okay, hey, I don't have to go to work tomorrow, maybe I can try this today. So that's the reason
That's
why
right.
we are
Yeah.
doing this.
Sure.
Thank you
Awesome.
so
It's a
much.
great initiative, and thanks a lot for speaking to me. And I think all the best to Goli Soda and all your future dialogues with other people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.